Hello, everyone. In this lesson, we'll be creating a loader component. Currently, we use this thing everywhere, just loading text. This looks very unprofessional. We need to address this. I want a spinning loader instead of loading text. Let's have a look at how this is set up in our app context. App context is our initial loading, in this case, of the user. And so, when someone first visits the site, they see the loading text in the corner. If we slow down the connection, we will be able to see it. Now, while various styles and others are loading, and only then we see the loading, and then it disappears. But we will work with it now, so we need to somehow fix the loading state to be able to observe it. So we will just add this thing for now, and this will suffice. We'll fix it later. The main thing is now we can always see this loading. Well, let's proceed to create our component. So, let's go to the folder with Components and create Component Loader. So, let's declare the index.txt file with the following content. We will have two types of loaders, fundamentally. A full-page loader means it will blur across the entire width and height, with a circle in the center. But sometimes, a certain section is loading. For example, with a list of all ideas, we should have a small section with this loader at the bottom. Therefore, I propose we define two types. It's simply a span component with the class name loader always, and CSS type device page or type device section, depending on the type. Alright, so now let's add the file index.module.css. Alright, and add our styles there. Alright, so these are our styles. Excluding this mixin, let's go over what we have. If this is a type page, we say height 100%, width 100%, and here's a certain loader. And a type section means a height of 80 pixels and a width of 100%. Also, since we're using a span, which is by default an inline element, we set it to display block to make it a block element. All right. Now, let's go over our mixin. Let's go to mixins and create our loader mixin. So I'll add the code first, then explain it. So here we need mathematical functions, so we will import the CSMASD library. And this CSS I actually found somewhere on the internet. Basically, all it does is create a spinning circle that represents loading. But we pass in the border width here, and accordingly, we can play with the style of our loader. And you might ask why I'm adding it to a mixin and not just inserting it here directly. Well, firstly, because we use it twice since we might want to use different width and height parameters here. But I like them to be the same because I like all spinners to be the same size, but you can do it differently. Nevertheless, we also use this mixin on the button because the button also has a loading state, and there the spinner definitely needs to be smaller. So, a mixin after all. Here we apply the spin animation, which lasts for 1 second and 1/10 of a second, and moves infinitely in a forward sequence. And all it does is simply rotate this circle from 0 degrees to 360 degrees, and loop around. There. That's all our mixin. Okay, we added the mixin, but I think there's a variable gray used here that isn't in our variables yet, so we need to add it. So let's add the gray color variable. Okay, so let's try using this loader. So let's insert it here. Loader A, Type page? Uh-huh. All right, let's check it. See, look at this beautiful element. Clearly, professionals programmed this page to load. Great. We've added it here. Let's add it to other places. It's not hard to find them. We marked them all with a text loading. So, we have a page wrapper. Here it is. Loading is needed here too. Take the loader and insert it here. We can subordinate the context, and we already did. But the page wrapper needs to be broken to always load something. Well, let's go to the page. And which one is still a normal page? Well, the idea viewing page, yeah. Just say true or something. Uh-huh. Okay, it's loading, but it's not centered. Not centered. Let's also check the desktop layout, since it is centered on desktop. This is because if we study the styles of our layout, it turns out that our layout is 100% height, navigation takes up some space, and the content is short. And actually, it is centered, but relative to the content, so we need to adjust our layout so it at least takes the full height, and if it's longer, then it's longer. Yes. Let's move on to layout styles, layout styles, layout styles. And here we set its 0.0 auto. Let it be 1.1 100%. There. That's if it's 900 pixels or less. 1 means it can expand, it can also shrink. But generally, if it can, let it take up 100%. All right, previously that's how it was. So it might turn out that we don't need to recheck it. So, and it didn't break here? Excellent. Now this loading works everywhere. And it turned out that here it's like this, and there too. So we can even delete and save this. And ideally, everything will still work. Yes, everything works. Great. In Page Wrapper, we've added a loader. Let's fix it and move on. So, in all ideas, page there is also loading, but this is a sectional loading. Here, so, loader, type, section. All right, and let's break it too and take a look at it. All ideas. Here it loads. Okay, but I'd still like to see how it looks in practice. So let's slow down the internet and browse this page. Slow 3G, loading here. Something's wrong. Loader section. There was another loading here somewhere. Ah, yes, because this is the initial loader, when nothing has been loaded yet. And here we forgot to add it. CSS more. Let's insert it here. We'll check. Loading. The page is loading. All right. Let's fix it now. Fixed. Broke it. Let's go. Yes, the loader is there. It loads and then disappears. Looks good. How great it's here. That's how we build a proper internet. Let's move on. So, there's something similar on the sign out page as well. Let's comment out the sign out functionality for now and just display our loading. We go to logout, here's our infinite loading. And let's insert it here too, loader type page. And don't forget to import it. So, done. And here too, the loader works great. Great. Restore its operation. Yeah, but this should be a comment. Okay, well, now we're being logged out. Well, we're logged out? Great. Because we're going to work with the button loading anyway. All right. Let's move to the button component and close all unnecessary pages. button. All right. We're only loading this button. Accordingly, we'll work with only this one. We already have the loading state, but it's not yet passed to the style, and we need to pass it to the style. Like CSS loading, it will exist if loading is passed. All right. And also, I want to make it so that when our button is loading, this text should become invisible, and a spinner should spin in its place. However, the width of the button is determined by its content. So, to prevent content jumping, the text shouldn't just be replaced with a loader. It should be made invisible but still occupy its space, and the loader should spin on top. So, let's do just that. This means the text, this submitting, is no longer needed, and therefore, you can only set children, but you need to wrap it in a certain span to be able to set invisibility to this span. CSS from the input text point. Okay? From the JSX point of view, let it be so. Now let's work with the styles. This means that our button might also have the class loading at the same time. Let's add it. Dot loading. So, we will do the following. We will include our loader, but with different input parameters. Make it smaller. And we will add opacity 0 to the text on the button. Also for our loader. This pseudo element author, this thing is added inside the element. But this is more about layout talks. In this tutorial, we agreed not to go too deep into it. So we have it as position absolute. For position absolute to work properly, the button itself must have a position relative. Position relative. Okay? So let's just temporarily check what happens if we make an endlessly loading button. Well, we have loading passed in button props, so it doesn't load. All right, let's just slow down the internet and then call sign in, and here is our loading button. Great, that's exactly what we needed. Well, let's check if we have text loading anywhere else in any format. Okay, not just in any format, but with 3 dots. No 3 dots. It seems we replaced all loaders with something much nicer, and we can move on. Thank you all. See you soon.